Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Zero Dark Nerdy, the world's most notorious pop culture podcast, brought to you by betonline.ag for all your sports betting needs. The Believe Podcast Network, that is BLEAV. And if you're here in the Triad area, be sure to check out Red Cinemas for all your cinematic adventures. Check out their website for movie times, redcinemas.com. Today's episode, we are going to be covering the 50-year anniversary of one of the greatest flicks of all time, The Godfather. We got Captain Cleveland in the building, Ryan Saba, and the none other than the one and only Michael Torek. Say hello to everybody out there.
Hey, hello, everybody out there.
So glad to have you guys on here, especially you, Michael. You've been, this is probably what, your third or fourth episode with us now, I believe.
I think this is maybe the third. Yeah, I'm honored to be here.
This is the first time we've been on together.
Oh yeah,
I've never been on an episode with Michael before, so it's an honor, man. Huge fan, right?
Oh well, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that.
There you go. Well, if he decides not to come back, I know who to blame, Saba. So, so Michael, let's start with you in terms of The Godfather. I know it's not your first time watching it, but you literally are fresh off of watching it, and just what it means to you as a film fan, as an actor, you know, everything under the sun.
Yeah, right. That is a huge question. You know, it's interesting because it was so much fun revisiting this movie, because I spent the weekend trying to figure out when the last time was that I actually watched it from start to finish. And I don't know that I can recall, but I remember just watching it again. I was like, oh my God, everything about this movie is what made me excited as an actor. I mean, how could you, every Italian kid growing up in that time period wanted to be Marlon Brando, right? We all put the things in our lips and we talked like this and we did this and I'm making an offer and I can't do it and I won't even try. But the very first scene, I'm speechless because the movie's so good and I literally did just come off of watching it. But it you know, came from a time when that style of acting was kind of new. I mean, maybe not new. It was just this real underplayed, quiet style of acting and real subtle. I watched a lot of the. I have the DVD box set, an old one, and so I watched some special features, and it was fascinating to watch them sort of in the making, a looking behind the scenes, if you will. And I was kind of shocked to see and hear, and I don't want to take anything from your little nuts, but they tried to fire Pacino halfway through the filming of the movie because the studio didn't like what he was doing.
Yeah,
and it wasn't until the Salazzo scene when he goes into the restaurant and he shoots the two guys in the head where they're like, holy, this guy's really got some chops, right? And so everything just about that ability to literally be understated and playing the subtext and letting the camera do the work is just inspiring as an actor, not to mention as an Italian man who has a bit of a mafia fascination anyway. I fell in love with that movie on a whole nother level anyway. So I don't know that I answered your question because I'm still just sort of, I'm still overwhelmed by the power of that film.
Well, I mean, you know, and it speaks volumes because, you know, you just got done watching it. And I feel like Godfather is one of those films where when you watch it, it does feel like the first time over and over again. You know, it's not one that you can get bored with. It's just, I mean, it's definitely stood the test of time. You know, I mean, this was one of the highest grossing films of all time during that time period. And I'm really glad you mentioned that as far as the tone of the film, because during that time period, there was, you know, I think it was competing against films like Cabaret, you know, these comedies, these musicals. So there wasn't a lot of very serious, you know, dramas out there per se, especially for Paramount. They were known more for the comedy side, for the action film. So this was definitely a different approach of what Hollywood was doing. And this was actually one of the first films that had ever had a nationwide release, because during that time period, they would release the film on certain markets, you know, usually LA first, New York, Miami, and then it would kind of come towards the middle into the Midwest and things like that. And just, it would be a slow rollout. And this was one that they took a big chance on because they wanted to go ahead and get it out there and start the buzz early.
Right. That's amazing. And, compare it to some of the movies that you talked to, again, to backtrack to that acting side of things. It's so subtle and it's so simple and it's so honest that it's inspiring to watch, to think that, all you have to do is just sit there and let the camera do the work for some of it. And also Coppola, is ridiculous in his directing and his ability to tell a story with a camera. Even just that very opening scene with the reverse dolly shot as it pulls away with the guy. You don't even see Brando for like the first 4 minutes of the movie. And then it reveals
the pallbearer.
Yeah, it's just like brilliant.
Buonasera.
Yes.
Buonasera.
So Ryan, what was your kind of first take of watching it and then just over time?
Look, man, this is my favorite movie. It really is. Where to start? So, I've always been fascinated by the organized crime genre. I just, I took to it at an early age. And what I would say is this is, pun intended, the Godfather of the organized crime genre. What I love most about this movie, this film, excuse me, we are with somebody who makes films for a living or is in the film industry. So I think I should speak normal or speak, with a little bit of respect. So the point is, this is one of those films that it's on AMC or it's on AMC, I think, is the one that runs it the most. And they'll do a, Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Godfather 3, sometimes marathon, and it's on with commercials for almost 24 hours. It is an epic family film that the acting is, you think about the cast, Pacino, Bobby Duvall, Jimmy Caan. I'm talking about these guys like they're my brothers, right? Like, but Talia Shire, her name's skipping my name, who plays Kay Hagan.
Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton. Like, you think of, you talk about the cast of this movie and you start to, are they all amazing actors because this springboarded the majority of their careers? Obviously not Brando, but the rest of them. Or were they always destined for greatness and this, Coppola was just able to put this cast together? I don't know, but it's one of those rewatchables. It's something you watch over and over again. There's no miss. John Cazale, who plays Fredo, oh God, he's phenomenal. I will tell you a story. So number one, I've seen all the movies, read all the books. I've got the box sets. I had the box set on VHS still somewhere in a box. It's either at my house or at my parents' house, the double. But when I was in school, my first year of college, I went to a small school up in northwestern Ohio called Bowling Green. They had one of those old school cinemas up on Main Street. Think the Carolina Theater. For those of you that are in Greensboro, where it's got the seating, it's got the curtain that pulls back, but they actually showed videos on a reel. So I went like a Tuesday night or a Monday night or whatever. They were doing like an old movie, whatever night, and where they would do Rocky Horror one week. They would do all those old films that everybody likes to go see. So I went and saw The Godfather. There was 2 fucking intermissions. Like, they had intermissions and the whole 9 yards. So I got there at like 6 o'clock, and with intermissions and just that movie's, the runtime on that thing's almost 4 hours anyways, I think. So we're talking, I'm walking home back down Main Street at like 11 o'clock at night, but I will always remember that. And the other thing, we talk about the acting, we talk about the cast, we talk about Coppola, his directing style. This film isn't the same without him. The mark that he leaves on it. I took a film class at UNCG. Shout out to the Spartans. During my undergrad there, where when I finished my undergrad there, a lot of colleges I went to. So that's a whole, that's a different episode. But I had a film class, and we actually kind of had to, in those film classes, you study the different types of shots, the different angles, the different lighting and all that. So we had to kind of show a scene that we really loved from a movie and talk through it and talk about the directing style and the lighting and all that. So I selected the scene after they shoot Sonny at the causeway, where Brando's still kind of weak and feeble from the assassination attempt by the Turk, and he comes down, and Tom Hagen's sitting there, and it's lit very darkly, and he's like, he's like, I'm hearing people coming and going. My wife's crying. You needed to have a drink, so tell me what you need to say. They shot Sonny on the causeway, and he kind of does his Brando thing, and he takes the deep breath. And he's like, make all inquiries, collects himself, and then they go to the mortuary where Bonacera is at, and he's like, now you owe me my favor. And you see the lighting, and they pull the sheet away, and he looks down, and he's just looking at him. He said, look how they massacred my boy. That sort of 4 or 5 minute sequence of that movie with the lighting, the acting, the emotion, it touched me enough at 19, 20 years old to talk about it in a film class. So I'll always remember that. The two big takeaways is me watching the version, the actual version, the way it was shown in 1972 or whatever, when the film came out on reels with intermissions, and talking about it in a film class. So I could talk about this film forever, but I am a huge fan, and I'm disappointed. And Brian, maybe this is a good time to transition. Mm-hmm. I have not watched the series with Miles Teller on Paramount Plus, The Offer. I will. A lot of great television out there, as we all know. So it's tough to stay on top of everything. I'm down a Succession rabbit hole right now. Not to change the subject, but that is a phenomenal television show. But I'm just curious about The Offer, and without giving away too much, to talk about that, because you've been, the last couple times I've seen you, you've been kind of in my ear going, have you seen The Offer yet? Have you seen The Offer yet?
Yeah, so I did not know too much about this. I think I had a free 3-week trial, 1-month trial of Paramount Plus, something like that. And I see it on there. Sayeb and I talk all the time about how big Miles Teller's fans that we are. So, I check it out, and let me tell you, I only watched the first 4 because, of course, by the time I started the free trial, it was like 4 days left. But on top of that too, the series itself wasn't done yet either. That's what it was. It wasn't done yet. It was week by week. So now it is done. So if you do have Paramount Plus, or if you have opportunity to go ahead and get your 30-day free trial, I highly recommend it. So I don't want to give away too much, because it's amazing to see how much this movie almost did not get made. I mean, the budget was only $5 million. There was a point where Paramount almost sold it to another studio because they were kind of siphoning money and trying to figure out what's what, because they were owned at the time by Gulf Western, I believe, which was the head company. And it's a lot of different characters. And I got to tell you, Miles does a great job as Al Ruddy, the producer who put it all together, a newish producer in Hollywood. For those of you who don't know, this may date people a little bit, but he's the guy that came up with Hogan's Heroes. That was his shot in Hollywood. And then he did a movie called Fosse, and it was some motorcycle movie with Robert Redford. But so he only had a little bit under his belt, and his first real gig was putting together The Godfather, which they bought the rights for only $15,000 at the time, which is insane. Like I said, I don't want to give away too much, because there's a lot of things going on here. You get to see a lot of Joe Colombo, who was very instrumental in getting the movie made. The book got a lot of backlash originally from the mafia community. Sinatra, not a big fan of the book, especially the character in the book. He thought it was based on him. So you see Sinatra in the show. But the cast is just outstanding. And then just kind of seeing it put together is the best thing. That's what, like, I don't want to give away too much, because even though we've all seen one of the greatest movies of all time, watching the show and just seeing it come together and all the like nitpicking and things that they had to do, and then interference with the mafia, interference with the government, even sometimes like internal conflicts. You know, it's just great to see. Great acting. I believe it's 10 episodes long. Giovanni Ribisi plays Joe Colombo. And it's during the kind of like Colombo Wars a little bit between him and Crazy Joe Gallo on top of that. So you have real life mafia elements going on into, yes, it's a mafia movie, but most importantly, it's a movie about family. And that's kind of what's really stressed throughout the show, and the different characters and everything going on in the middle of it. So check it out. It's Paramount Plus. It's great television. Just watch it, especially if you are a fan of The Godfather. This is a must watch for you.
Sinatra didn't like the Johnny Fontaine portrayal. No. You can act like a man.
Love it at all.
Yeah. I should tell you that in the special features, going back to your story, Ryan, that Bobby Duvall has a great story about how when he's on film and he's acting on film, he doesn't like to do more than 1 or 2 takes, because he's pretty confident in what he does, and he likes to keep it honest and natural and real. Yeah. And he did 2 takes of that scene that you were talking about, and Coppola came over and he's like, okay, let's do one more. And in his head, he's thinking, God, you know what? I got it. I mean, we've got it in the can. I don't know that I can do any more than what I've already done. And then when they took a break and Brando said something and something clicked in him, and the scene that made the cut that you were referring to, that's that 4th take of that scene where he gets that little tear in his eye and he gets a little choked up. And so I just think that's just, I mean, I was going to speak to, it's amazing that they do that. And I love that that was the scene that you picked, because that's the scene that stands out to me as well. But especially for Brando's, just his reaction to look what they did to my boy.
Yeah.
Is just, I mean, you can only hope to be that good. I think that my understanding, if I remember correctly, this was one of Pacino's first films, if not the biggest role he'd had to date, because he was coming from New York. He was coming from the stage. He was a stage actor to start, right?
The studio didn't want him.
Studio didn't want him. Studio didn't want Brando.
Right.
They actually, this fascinated me they showed a screen test of Martin Sheen.
Yes. The studio wanted
Michael Corleone. The studio wanted Martin Sheen. They wanted Robert Redford. They wanted Ryan O'Neal. They wanted
Ryan O'Neal,
sexier,
Warren Beatty,
star appeal. Yeah. And then at one point they even had James Caan test for Michael Corleone because they just didn't think they could get what they wanted from Pacino. It was just that special features was just fascinating to watch. Even also just to see the way there's this great little scene where they're getting ready to run a take, and Coppola grabs this thing that literally is the size of a microwave or a toaster. It's literally this black and white box the size of a toaster that is his feed to the camera. And he puts on his headphones and he grabs the toaster and he puts it in his lap, and so he's watching the scene there. Whereas in today's world, it's all, wireless and digital and Bluetooth, and the Video Village is all the way on the other side of the lot, and the people and it's live feeding right to the producers that can talk about it in the moment. But just to see the way they were even making this movie back then in the 70s without the technology they have today is fascinating.
Have you ever seen the Godfather saga?
No.
So it's a version of the films of Godfather Part 1 and Godfather Part 2, where they show them in chronological order. So as you know, Godfather Part 2 mirrors Michael and
Tito
and his father's lives at their part at their time in their lives. But it shows the films in chronological order where they go back and forth. It's no lie. It's like an 8-hour ordeal, but it cuts the movie up in a way that it is a unique experience. I've only watched it once because it's so long and it's just so involved. And it's also the director's cuts of each film.
Oh, sure.
So there's different stuff. So like at the end, the dinner scene, at the end of the first one where it's Vito's birthday and they're bringing the dinner and they're bringing the birthday cake in, where Michael tells them at the dinner table before Vito comes in that he's going to the Marines, and Sonny gets all mad and he comes over the table. He's like, "What, are you going to kill your father on his birthday?" And then he takes the cake, and it's rum cake, and he puts it in Tom Hagen's face, and they all go back to normal. But that happens before anything. So that's actually the opening scene of this movie, of this film, the Godfather saga. So I would encourage you, if you can get your hands, sometimes they show it on like AMC and stuff.
It was very, Max, correct?
It's somewhere, but if you got 9 hours to kill, I would encourage you to take a look at it.
Which I do all the time.
We all do. And I got to say, a lot of the stuff you just said, Michael, especially the kind of Pacino saga going back and forth. Like I do not want to give out any spoilers for this at all whatsoever, but it touches on a lot of that stuff and just
the offer.
Passion, and the offer and the passion between Mario Puzo and Coppola, because they both wrote the script together. At first, Puzo was brought on to do it. He couldn't do it. He's like, I need Coppola to help me out, and kind of seeing that camaraderie and everything else. And also too, for the time, not only was this a movie that was one of the very first national releases in film history, this was also one at the time, one of the longest movies of all time too. They were all an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and they fought to keep it at 2.5 hours long. They tried to cut out even more than what was originally cut out. And Al Ruddy, and it's really more about Al Ruddy. It's really based on his experience, and he, he's still around. He's one of the executive producers on the show. Miles Teller does a great job playing this character. But it was Ruddy, Coppola, the crew just being like, look, it's got to be 2.5 hours. If we take out any more, it's not going to make sense.
Does the offer touch on Coppola's book? Have you guys ever seen anything about the book that Coppola made when he broke down the novel and literally took the novel out and it's a binder that's like 8 inches thick. And he takes out pages, every single page from the novel. Mm-hmm. And he attaches another piece of paper over it in a frame and glues it and grommeted it and underlines everything and literally verbally storyboards his movie from the novel. And that's what he takes with him onto set when he's going to shoot the movie, because oftentimes just what was in the book was more important visually than what they could storyboard or put in the screenplay. And so he's like, nope, here's what we're going for. This is what I want. And he talks about the pitfalls of the scene and how to avoid the pitfalls of the scene and what the tempo needs to be and who the characters are and the lighting and the climax of each scene. It's fascinating.
Wow.
So if you have access to your special features DVD and the previous box set, that's where you can check out Coppola's book. Like, that thing will be in some sort of Smithsonian Hall of Fame. Like, it has to be. Like, it
probably is already. Yeah,
but it is fascinating to see the way he puts that thing together in creating this movie.
I'm really glad you said that, Michael, because I was going to ask, do directors because I did not know that. So in the show, you actually see this gigantic binder that he walks around on set with. And I was going to ask, is this something normal? I mean, granted, it was a different time then that directors normally have. So no, it definitely shows it in the show, but I had no idea.
Oh yeah, that's an actual real thing that Coppola made and put together. I mean, I'm not a director by trade, and people ask me why won't you ever direct? And because I have a hard time seeing the big picture in the way the director has to see the entire world. For me, I'm a little narcissistic, and I like to just figure out where I live in the world. But I really think that that's what he was doing. And having worked with several directors, they all have different ways of going about it. And I think technology-based, that was just how he chose to do it. Other directors I've worked with will use a Pinterest board, and some of them will create a journal and all that kind of stuff. But, none of that stuff was available back then,
sure,
electronically. So it was literally this, just underlined and notes. And the fascinating part was he had this couple of pages where I'm trying to think of the specific scene in general. It might have been the causeway, Sonny's execution. I can't remember which one specifically, but he would circle all of these highlighted points within the actual book and draw these lines to the margins. and talk about what it meant or what it needed to be or how it needed to look. And the way he knew that this was an important part of the scene or needed to make sure important part of the movie was how many lines were on the page. And so there got to a place where you couldn't actually read the actual book itself. And instead you were just looking at his notes because he had so many notes going all over the place that this went this way. It was really interesting to see
that is fascinating
all together.
Yeah. I'd
Wow.
love to see that.
I'm sure it's somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere on display.
It's gotta be.
Michael,
Yes.
does this movie get made today?
Yes.
Okay. That's one thing that you know, with the state of Hollywood, and look, this is from an outside perspective. So you're obviously in the industry, so you've got more insight than I do. But I feel like there are fewer and fewer movies being made. Less and less is actually at the cinema. I mean, maybe
Sure.
it's an HBO, maybe it's an HBO Max or a Netflix or something like that. But you know, I guess where I'm going with this is it feels like over the last, definitely since COVID, but over the last maybe 5 years or so, the studios are taking less and less risk with the films that they're giving budgets to and putting in the theaters. And this, to me, obviously with The Offer and everything else, I mean, this was a huge risk, right? They wanted Laurence Olivier. They didn't want Marlon Brando. They wanted all the people that you talked about for even Jack Nicholson was on that list for the Michael Corleone character. I mean, could this maybe today in 2022, it just got to the point where the studio was like, you know what? I don't need this bullshit. We cut it.
Well, that's interesting because I think I would, in my opinion, I guess, would say that it's not about. So there were a couple of moments in the watching this movie back where there were some references to race and some slurs and everything that I was like, oh yeah, you can't make that reference today. But other than that, I think the movie gets made. And so I wonder if we're at a place now where it's not about whether the movie gets made, it's that so many movies are getting made.
Yeah, they're just
so
going to
much
different
television is being
platforms.
produced, right?
Yeah,
and so back at 50 years ago, studios, how many movies were they putting? I can't tell you, 10 at the most, maybe. Right? I don't know if they're putting out how many movies a year, whereas now there's so much content that it's really about saturate. It's the Netflix syndrome, right? We're going to put out as much things as we possibly can, and if one of them hits, we'll make all of our money back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I guess because we're so possibly oversaturated with material that it's hard to maybe see the Godfather of the 21st century. Like, what is that movie? What is that really sort of director storytelling, simple acting, honest sort of movie that really grabs you? And I just think it's different now than it was then. So in general, yeah, I think the movie gets made, but if we're able to actually find it, it might get lost in the shuffle. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now, just out of curiosity for my knowledge and for our listeners out there, any particular, like, and there's so many great performances, and we're not trying to take away from that, but do you each have one particular character that you're just drawn to? That's just that's my person right there.
From their performance, or just like
for their performance in the movie,
like who you relate with?
Yeah, or just who your favorite is as far as on all of them. I know there's a lot, but as far as their performance in The Godfather and then it can be you can relate to, you just like them the best.
No, I think the standout performance for me is Robert Duvall.
I would agree.
There you go.
Just because his character and his demeanor and his presence on film and just everything that character brings to the story is so different than everybody else.
Yeah.
That it's so subtle and so simple that I was just like, oh man, that's right there. I mean, you can't deny Pacino, you can't deny Brando. There oftentimes where Talia Shire is a little over the top.
Yeah.
For me and her screaming, and I think James Caan encompasses the character really, really well and does that character justice given who Sonny is supposed to be in that storytelling. But hands down for me, just as far as the subtlety of acting, what I look for when I'm on film, it's Duvall and then Pacino.
Yeah, especially, during the wedding when Michael explains to Kay, you know, his last name's Hagen. How is he your brother? How basically he was just homeless and Sonny brought him home, and he was there from then on. You know, that dynamic, they did a very good job of making him an outsider but completely part of the family. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's Robert Duvall, his acting and his ability to you know, get in the fold there. You know, Brian would probably tell you that I'm the most like Sonny, but I think that's a lie. I'm Pacino, the boy who would be king, man. Come on. Like there's of course I relate to him the most. Next.
I love it. You know, you can't read my handwriting, but Duvall, Dan Hagen, that's my guy. Just cool, calm, collective. Just like Saba said, the outsider that was brought in as part of the family. Yeah. And it was one of my takeaways when I was 11 and 12, I remember asking my dad, what's a consigliere? And he's like the Godfather, but you know, to like, and he would relate him to like my Godfather, you know what I mean? And things like that. It's like the trusted advisor of the family. And that's just something that's always been a part of me. And that's what he embodies in the entire film, the voice of reason per se. Even when Michael's like, hey, listen, you know, Dan, we appreciate your help on this, but you're not a wartime consigliere, or I think he said something along the lines of that.
That's what he said.
Yeah. So, you know, just him having that demeanor, that calmness as a lawyer, even when he goes to visit the director out in Hollywood, you know what I mean? It's he just plays
that scene is just fascinating.
Waltz.
Yeah.
No,
he's so, I mean, but he's so calm.
Yeah.
In his own way, right? And there's just this sort of power and this sort of threatening nature. There's just this air of confidence and ease to that performance that you're just like, I mean, I want to see a story about him.
Yeah.
Write me a Godfather Part 4 and show me that sequel. Yeah, it's so layered and so fascinating that you can't help but be drawn into it.
Absolutely.
There you go. Well, before we wrap up, Michael, I know you got a couple projects going on. Let the fans know we're going to air this next week, but we're going to be smack dab in the middle of your most current project. So let the world know what you got going on and what you got coming up.
I'm playing Roman Calhoun on The Walking Dead. The final 8 episodes of the flagship show, The Walking Dead, started last night. And that was my second of 4. And so I will be appearing throughout the rest of the thing. I won't give you any more than that for NDA reasons, and I won't give you any more than that for you fans, so you don't know what may or may not befall me in my time on that show. But that is where we're at right now. And then just coupled with, I tell you what, it's getting really busy, which I'm really excited about. So a lot of auditions going on. So hopefully the next time you have me on, I will have more news to share other than just how my time spent on The Walking Dead. I will say, though, that in preparation for watching last night's episode, they showed, oh, my God, there's a Daryl series coming. Mm-hmm. There's a Negan series coming. Yeah. There's a Rick and Michonne series coming. Yeah. There are all these series coming from this other thing. And all I can hope for is that somehow Roman Calhoun just appears.
Let me make it. Just let me make it.
Right? Just, you know what? Bring me back into somebody else's storyline, whether it be a prequel, you know, or a post thing or whatever it is. I don't want my time on The Walking Dead to be done with this flagship series, but it's such a great show to be a part of, you know, in the way they've told their story for 11 years. And so, yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, seriously.
Congratulations
for you, brother. So happy. I remember the first conversation that we had with you on the show. You just got into season 2 of Ozark after seeing you on season 1. And I'll never forget it. Flathers being like, do you watch Ozark? And I was like, oh, hell yeah. And he was like, you know, this character. I was like, man, I love him. And, you know, it's before we knew, which is crazy. We didn't know each other, especially being in the service industry in Greensboro, where there's already like 0 degrees of separation. But it's always a blast to have you on, man. We're always rooting for you. The Walking Dead thing's fantastic. I got to tell you, I have watched Boss Level 3 times already. That is just such a fun movie to watch.
That movie is that's a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just fun to be a part of, and getting to hang out with those guys. I mean, I got to hang out and play with Rampage Jackson.
Right.
And, if you're an MMA guy, I mean, what more? That guy's nuts. They're nuts. Those MMA dudes are nuts. Sugar Shade Evans and Rampage Jackson, I got to hang out and have a good time. That was really the cool thing about Joe Carnahan. I don't know about any of his other movies, and some of them that I've seen, I can only assume they're that way. But it's just a bunch of people getting together to have a good time. And let's roll camera. Let's just roll camera and have a good time and see what happens. And so it was just kind of a big party, and it all kind of came together. And I'm glad that Hulu picked it up, because it was touch and go there for a while, that nobody was going to distribute it and put it out there. So
I'm really glad it happened, because I remember you brought it up. I think it might have been that same episode, either the first episode or second episode. And, especially Mel Gibson, Frank Grillo.
Frank Grillo.
Right? Yeah, Frank Grillo. And I tell you, man, it is just such a fun watch. It really is. So, if you have not, if you're listening and watching out there, Walking Dead, be sure to check them out. And of course, on Hulu, Boss Level, many other things. Mike Torek on IMDb. Yep. Check out his whole entire catalog.
Check it out. Click on it. Follow me.
I know we're going to get to the point where one day Mike's going to text me back. He's going to be like, I'm going to need you to talk to my assistant so then we can book some more episodes.
Never.
And that's
I'm here for you always. Always.
We appreciate that.
If anything, I'll tell my assistant, no. I got to go. I got to go do this thing, because these are my guys. They've been behind me since day one. So
we love you, brother.
I appreciate it.
Make sure we stay on the bat line, man. We definitely appreciate it.
Hey, I have to add one more thing before you sign us off. Only because I was telling my parents that I was going to be on the show again last night, and that we were going to talk about the show. And my mom shared with me, this is the first movie you ever saw.
Wow.
And I went, I'm sorry, what? Because I just turned 50. I turned 50 in July, the big 50. When I was born, my mom took me as a newborn to a drive-in movie theater in South Carolina to watch The Godfather.
Wow.
So technically, I saw this movie when I was a month old.
Talk about burying the lead.
Right? So, I didn't know how to bring it up. I just wanted to share that late. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know how podcast leads work. I'm new to this whole thing.
Neither do I. So, yeah.
Well, I can always edit that out and put it there in the beginning. Give a big shout out to Mom Dukes out there for letting me get chops a month in. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's excellent. Well, listen, be sure, again, check out Michael Torek. Michael, what is your social media spots for everybody to check you out at, besides just on IMDb?
Instagram is the major one, and that's just at Michael Turek.
There you go. Be sure to check them out on that. Don't forget to check out our sponsors, Believe Podcast Network, betonline.ag for all your sports betting needs, and Red Cinemas for all your cinematic adventures here in Greensboro, North Carolina. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow on all social media and podcast platforms. We appreciate the love and support, and we will catch you next time. Peace.
Sweet.
You guys hang out.
Yeah! Victory!
And anger management?
Fuck anger management.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.
You know when you're listening to a true crime story that has an unbelievable plot twist that makes you stop in your tracks? That's what our podcast, People Are the Worst, brings you with each episode. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Rebecca. We're identical twins who love true crime cases that make you say, didn't see that coming, and we hate the people responsible for them. Listen to People Are the Worst now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.